Well, it has come down to this in the technique guide here on Geekdom 101, the Kamehameha, the most iconic, possibly most important, possibly the technique that is most synonymous with Dragon Ball from the very beginning of the series through Z, GT, and Super and everything else is the Kamehameha. One that even people who don't even know what Dragon Ball is are familiar and have seen this move or versions of this move at some point in their life, because the Kamehameha is that iconic and that much of a mainstream representation of not just Dragon Ball, not just combat, but manga, anime, and I would go as far as to say even like pop culture, both in the United States, Latin America, Canada, all throughout Europe, Australia, and yes, even Japan. So let's begin the Kamehameha Technique Guide. So there's a lot to cover here with the Kamehameha. So to truly explain this technique, we're going to have to start all the way back at the beginning. Toriyama reveals a lot about the Kamehameha in an interview conducted for Daizenshu 4 of the official Dragon Ball guidebooks, where he reveals that he didn't originally want the techniques in the series to have names because he felt like if you're naming stuff in battle, it's a battle of life and death and you could end up dying in the middle of saying the name of a move, which is kind of true, but that's just how things are in Japanese, entertainment. It's just how it is. It's wacky like that, and we all love it. But it was Torishima, his editor, that told him you should probably name the techniques. And Toriyama reveals that it was actually his wife who named it the Kamehameha. And the Kamehameha name really is a perfect name for this move because it's both a pun as well as something that is perfectly describing a move that Muten Roshi, the Kame-SENNIN, the turtle hermit, would be the one who invented and is most known for perfecting this technique prior to the appearance of Goku in the story. Because you see, Kame-SENNIN works with Kamehameha, but Kamehameha, according to what Toriyama said in the Super Exciting Guide interview in the story volume edition, obviously the name Kamehameha came from the Hawaiian king known as King Kamehameha, which is why so many people who watch the series or read the series refer to it as the Kamehameha, even though it's not really supposed to be pronounced Kamehameha because Kamehameha is written in katakana, so you're supposed to pronounce it Kamehameha, but Kamehameha isn't really incorrect because it was named after the Hawaiian king and fit perfectly with Roshi. There really is no explanation as to what Kamehameha means. I've seen people call it the turtle wave, and that's fine, but the actual Kamehameha phrasing has no real meaning. It's just a loose meta pun named after the Hawaiian king that fits with Roshi, but there's no actual translation for what Kamehameha means. It's not a real word, if that makes sense. There are certain theories that the Hame part could mean like Hametsu, which translates to destroy or break, but I'm not a Japanese major in the language, so I'd rather not go down that path. Just know that until Toriyama made it mainstream, it was not a real Japanese word. The Kamehameha was first seen in the series in Dragon Ball Manga Chapter 14, which correlates to Dragon Ball Episode 8 of the original anime, when Gyumao, aka the Ox King's castle's on fire, and Roshi has to come in and use the Kamehameha to put the fire out. And shortly after that, our main character Goku is able to learn the technique and use it after seeing it only once, adopting it as his own signature move for the remainder of the franchise. And since Goku learned it, and all throughout the series, many others have used it as well, including Yamcha, Krillin, Tenshinhan used it once, Gohan, of course, Majin Buu learned it. It's just the technique of the series. Now, at one point, Yamcha describes the Kamehameha as being an ability that draws out the potential energy of the body and then releases it as a single ki. Now, in the past, I've discussed ki and chi and energy in various different videos here on the channel and how these things sort of relate to each other. But it really goes back to not just Japanese mythology, but even Chinese mythology and their belief system that every living being has an energy deep inside of them they can draw out of. And in this case, it's used to draw out energy and release it to fulfill a purpose, whether it be put out the fire like what Roshi did, or to injure or destroy an opponent. Now, throughout the years, I've seen a lot of people try to overanalyze the Kamehameha and overanalyze this sort of ability to make energy as something that's maybe a bit too scientific. I've seen theories about it being plasma and all these different things, but it really is, to me, not that complicated. Really, what the Kamehameha is and how it uses ki is really much more of a spiritual thing than a scientific thing. It permeates inner energy and allows you to manipulate particles around your hands. That's why the hand movement's so important. And basically ignite these particles. They're invisible subatomic particles that you're able to ignite and then release them like a projectile at a very fast speed towards your target. And this sort of substance that makes up this energy can really be thought of as kind of this mixture of different elements. It kind of can be a combination of electromagnetic energy, heat, cold, different sorts of elements, all put together to serve a purpose. I mean, science will tell you that, every particle has positive and negative values. And this concept is not too different from what the Asians would refer to as yin and yang. So there is a bit of a scientific element to this, don't get me wrong. It's just not really plasma. Firing a Kamehameha is almost like a supernatural ability when you think about it. Because what you have here is you have like a wave of energy that is kind of bendable, because Goku can kind of choose what direction it goes in, and some Kamehamehas look different than others. Some are very big, some are very small, but they're all composed of millions of particles of energy. And these particles not only explode on contact, but are also able to destroy matter and rip through certain things. We've seen Kamehamehas go through walls and things of that nature, go through bodies even. And the truth is that even though the Kamehameha in the universe of Dragon Ball is not the first technique ever developed like this, the reality is that creatively, through the eyes of Toriyama, other techniques in Dragon Ball that are similar to Kamehameha, that have similar properties, are manifestations of the Kamehameha, even though it's not the Kamehameha. For example, Vegeta's Gallic Gun. It's not the Kamehameha, it's his version of it. He didn't even know what the Kamehameha was when he came to Earth, but the idea here is that the Kamehameha was sort of like the foundation for other techniques to come along in the series that Toriyama would come up with that are similar to the Kamehameha, although not identical. The Masenko being another one. We have all these different random ki blasts that all sort of have similar properties. Particles of energy, yin and yang, using ki. It's all pretty much the same thing, and in many ways just a variant of the Kamehameha. Now, what I find interesting, and Toriyama does talk about this in the Super Exciting Guide himself, is that energy, the way it's described in the old text, is not visible. You can't see ki. But Toriyama felt like because he was telling a manga, illustrating a story, he felt like he had to actually show the Kamehameha, have it be an actual visible form of energy. Obviously, a lot of energy in the world we can't even see with the naked eye. And the Asians believed that if you open up your third eye and your chakra, you should be able to actually see the energy. But most of us can't with the naked eye. However, in Dragon Ball, Toriyama made the creative decision to actually show us the ki blast. And also, the energy in Dragon Ball comes in different colors. For example, the 10 times Kamehameha from GT is red. And I think a lot of this was the anime staff trying to be a bit more creative with the colors. But you're not supposed to see this, but in Dragon Ball you do see it because, first of all, it makes it a lot more exciting and more dramatic, and second of all, it would be kind of hard to tell a story with combat and not be able to see what's going on. Remember, in Dragon Ball at one point characters are beyond the speed of light, and yet Toriyama has to slow that down to illustrate to us what's going on, even though we know that they're moving at an incredibly fast speed. the eye cannot see it. In fact, even in the series, untrained characters can't even watch the fights. And yet we can, because we're the audience. They're trying to entertain us in the real world. And when you look into it a bit deeper, you come to understand that even the word Kamehameha is perfect because of the fact that it ends with the word ha. And the word ha, or the phrase ha, when it comes to martial arts, is often used to describe a ki, just a regular ki. And those of you who have taken martial arts, you know what I'm talking about. But a ki is basically when, well, maybe I should make this a separate video, but it's basically when you focus your energy onto a blow. It can be used in the real world. There's more to it than that. I'm going to keep it simple because I might do another video on this. But the word ha is sort of an expression of willpower through a projected shout or a scream. You know, it makes things more epic when you have characters saying Kamehameha. You know, it's a lot more dramatic that way. And Toriyama did it that way on purpose. And no matter what version you're watching, you can sense that when they do the slow build up to the Kamehameha, it just adds more dramatic tension because you know what's coming, but the buildup is just freaking awesome. Now, what about the hand positions of the Kamehameha? Where do those come from? I mean, hell, when I was a kid, before I even discovered Dragon Ball, I played the Street Fighter II arcade game, and in that game, Ryu and Ken used the Hadouken, which has a very similar, if not identical, hand movement to the Kamehameha. And what happens? A projectile of energy comes out. So I'm like, okay, what is this? Was Street Fighter influenced by Dragon Ball, or is there more to those hand movements? Toriyama answers this question in the super exciting guide interview where he says, and I quote, "When no one was around, I did a variety of poses and decided on one that looked cool, which was that pose. I get asked if I look at a lot of martial arts to get hints for techniques and poses. While I have watched a lot of kung fu movies, surprisingly enough, I didn't have all that much interest in the martial arts themselves." So that pretty much means that if Toriyama got the hand movements from a movie, he doesn't even remember which one it was, or he just kind of came up with it on his own, practicing the move when no one was looking, which is something that I'm sure a lot of you have done in the privacy of your own home. So if anything, the Hadouken probably did copy the Kamehameha, considering that Street Fighter came out after Dragon Ball in Japan. So Dragon Ball did come first. To develop the Kamehameha, it took Master Roshi 50 years, and Goku, because he's so enlightened and such a prodigy, was able to do it in a few minutes. But at the time, all he could really do with it is destroy a car. As Goku trained harder and grew as a fighter, he was able to figure out how to tap even more energy into the Kamehameha, put out more of his willpower and effort, and grow it to bigger and more powerful versions, as well as at one point even being able to fire the Kamehameha from his feet. That's right, it happened just once. And he was able to learn how to control the Kamehameha better, and his Kamehameha became more and more powerful. And since then, there have been dozens upon dozens of variations of the Kamehameha. The one-handed Kamehameha, the max power Kamehameha, the father-son Kamehameha, the family Kamehameha, God Kamehameha. And I did do a video about my favorite Kamehamehas of all time a few years ago. So check that out as a sequel to this video, or a prelude to this video, that is, because they do go hand in hand. This technique is the founding father of all Dragon Ball techniques, has been emulated and used hundreds of times. I mean, hell, even the big green dub refers to every single technique as the Kamehameha, incorrectly, of course. If you don't know what the big green dub is, I did do a video about that as well a few years ago, so check that out. But I digress. That's the Kamehameha Technique explained, and like I said, there's so many variations of it, and they're all pretty much the same thing, so there's not much left for me to explain about this technique at the current moment, but I'm sure that we'll see the Kamehameha multiple times in the future as Dragon Ball continues and in other forms of media, because it just is that much of an iconic move. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day and stay safe.